So, I would like to continue today from what we were speaking about yesterday. We were speaking about the challenges that Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur faced in making his presentation. And we saw a little clip, a film clip of the British Imperial, the atmosphere of the British Imperial culture at the time in India. And we saw that it was predominantly very, very, very self-confidently Western. And they felt, the British rulers at that time, felt themselves automatically, axiomatically, automatically superior in every department of knowledge and culture to the Indian natives, or the dark-skinned people who they were ruling. And they felt, just inherently they felt, it was their responsibility to give these people with their savage, very strange culture, to give them the benefits of a good education, Christianity, moral values, and everything that Europe could offer to these poor people. And at the same time, to take advantage of them economically. So we can take them, we can take their products, their productivity, and use that in the service of mankind, and especially England. And at the same time, we can give them our culture and raise them up. So as I pointed out to you yesterday, that anyone here, practically everyone here, but especially those who come from India, who have Indian roots, you have all been absolutely, thoroughly contaminated by this culture that you live in. Your education has ruined you. Has ruined you, every last one of you. It's just the most amazing thing that any of you are even here. And if you go to Melbourne or any other country of the world, what to speak of India, you'll find millions of your countrymen who would think that you were crazy for what you are doing, what you're giving up. Because we come to the West to make economic advantage. We have our education so we can become wealthy men and enjoy life to the maximum degree. And we should be good and pious in doing that, because we'll get good results from that. But this is the purpose of life. To enjoy life with your family, with your loved ones, with your job, with everything. Help society if you have time. You probably won't. But anyway, help as you can. But enjoy life and at all the benefits that Western materialism has given to India. And even the yoga system. Many people who have examined the yoga system, the Raja Yoga system, understand that it is completely contaminated with the Indian reformatory, very clever Indian mentality that we should take the best of the West and the best of the East and mix it together, and we should make the profit. Why they should make the profit, we should make the profit. So this is called materialism, materialistic life. And then yesterday we also saw some little glimpse of what it was like to be a hippie. What a hippie life was like. And hippies had decided they didn't buy it. They didn't want to go to war manipulated by commercial interests of the government. They didn't want to work hard day and night making money and just die in the end. They didn't think it was worth it. And then some of the hippie forerunners, they had been to India. And once I heard Srila Prabhupada explain, he was talking to Dr. Patel in Bombay, and he said to him, you know, this hippie movement, it started in India. And Dr. Patel was very shocked, and he said, no. He said, this hippie movement is, and he says, yes, look this, and Prabhupada keeps pushing him and goading him to see, what about this marijuana? It comes from India. Everything comes from India. The long hair, it came from India. And Dr. Patel, who was a doctor, he was very incensed and he kept saying, but the LSD, it is a chemical. It did not come from India. And Prabhupada kept, everything, all of it came from India. So we have a lot to thank India for. So India got its own back on the West by creating this concept in people's minds that just by taking intoxication and just by fornication, having sex like animals in the street, anywhere, whatever you want, whatever you choose to do, like some very degraded sadhus do, then you can become happy, you can become spiritual, a new high, and higher to what I don't know. And they would see with the influence of the drugs, colors swirling, emotional states would occur. They would look at something and it would move backwards and forwards on the wall. They'd have so many different mind-altering situations, and they considered this is spiritual. So I'm going to share with you something about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that makes it amazing that any one of us is actually here. Those who are contaminated by the materialistic Indian selfish educational system, or those who are contaminated by the rotten Western values. It's just amazing that we're here. So we want to hear now something of what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur taught. Because we've heard that he faced all of these elements, and we've heard that he was very bold. So what did he teach? So here is something that I found that fascinated me when I read it, and I hope that I have the ability to convey it to you. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur taught that there are 5 kinds of knowledge. 5 kinds of knowledge. And he taught this to all his disciples, and Srila Prabhupada also speaks about this. He taught that the first kind of knowledge is called pratyaksha. The second is called paroksha. The third is called aparoksha. The fourth is called adhoksaja. And the fifth one is called aprakrita. Now, pratyaksha, paroksha, and aparoksha, the first 3, they pertain to what we can understand to some degree by our own efforts, by our own capacity. But the last 2, adhoksaja and aprakrita, they define something that is absolutely beyond our ability to know. So how do you know something that's absolutely beyond your ability to know? So the knowledge of everything, that's what you get when you go to the university and you get your degree and your second degree. Then you get your PhD and you put all these little letters after your name. And nowadays it's quite cheap. There's so many people get PhDs and so on and so forth. This knowledge, you can acquire it by your senses, your eyes, your ears, your brain. You're studying, your hands, you're writing, you're looking on the computer, accessing all these different information, compiling it, writing it down, sending it in, and somebody marks it and gives you your degree. This is called sensory knowledge. Sensory knowledge. You get it by use of your senses, the faculties of your body. So knowledge of everything we see and realize by our direct experience is called pratyaksha. So here I can hold this cup. I can tell by holding it if the water is hot or cold. I can tell by drinking it if the water is clean and pure or if it's come from an impure source. I can tell you all those things by my own ability to do so. But this kind of knowledge is considered to be false. Now this is a little undermining for all you students who are studying away, working so hard to get out there in the world with all your letters after your names. But this is considered by anyone with any spiritual intelligence to be false, meaningless. Why? We must ask, why is it considered meaningless? Why is it considered false? Why is it undervalued by a sadhu, while it's overvalued by a materialist? And the answer is because this is transitory knowledge, and it's continuously changing. Constantly new theories come out about the origin of the world and this and that, and new business theories come out, and new ideas how to improve life for people, and now we're looking at this, and then we're looking at that, and now next we're going to do this. And especially in today's day and age, this kind of knowledge is constantly changing. And therefore it is considered to be false, because it has no permanence in any form. This is very important. It is false. It is not truth. It is relative truth. That means it's relative to what happened yesterday or tomorrow or the next day. It's important now, it's not important next year. It's always changing. So this is called pratyaksha. Aksha means the senses, the eyes, the ears, all the senses. So what I can acquire by my little tiny fleshy senses, and perhaps I have a big brain attached to them, that's considered to be the first kind of knowledge. Then the second kind of knowledge is called paroksha. Paroksha means that which we hear from authorities. I don't know anything, for example, about what's beyond this world. I know a little bit from NASA. They can tell me that there's universes and this and that and that and this and so on. But they can't give me any substantial information beyond this world. A few figures, 10 million, 5 billion, so on and so forth. But they can't tell me what's beyond this world. So Shastra tells us, authorized Shastra, not just any Shastra that is unauthorized, means it has not come through a realized chain of informational givers. So realized Shastra tells us there are higher planetary systems. We can't see them. If we stay on the pratyaksha level, we will doubt all of that. Because I can't see it, I don't believe it. And then what hope do we have for any spiritual advancement? So paroksha will tell you there are higher planetary systems with higher standards of living, and this, for example, one moment in the heavenly planets is equal to a year on this planet. And then we have to use our intelligence to try to understand this. But it's coming from a higher source. And we can help ourselves, just like, for example, if you see an ant and he's crawling across this table, he's minding his own business, he's going to go down the cloth and somewhere else. He has no idea about all of you. He has no idea that you could just go like this and finish his life. He has no perception of that. So Srila Prabhupada himself said, your problem is you judge everything from the level of human beings. You think human beings are the benchmark. Human beings can't live here. Human beings can't do this. No one can do it. And he says this is a very gross kind of mentality. So pratyaksha, these are the 5 kinds of knowledge that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had come to give to the world. Paroksha, he's telling what is beyond our ability to see. And then the third kind of level, the third kind of knowledge, this is knowledge, for example, taught by Shankaracharya. Basically, this is knowledge to do with Brahman, to do with the spiritual essence. that there is a oneness of spirit within everything. This is a higher level. Most people are not thinking like this. So this, one day we will have to die, and we will have to give up everything in this world. This kind of knowledge is higher level again. And when you all came to the temple, this is what people started talking to you about, yes? One day you will have to die, you'll give up everything, all your beauty will be finished, your body will go, everything you've collected in this life, finished, everything will be over, everything will go. We cannot take anything, not our pennies, not our pens, not our family. We can't take anything with us. So why are we collecting these foolish things? This is a higher level of knowledge. So nowadays we see Miss America, Miss World, this, that, and everybody's busy talking about these foolish things. But none of these foolish things have any meaning at the time of death. Because at the time of death, they cannot help you, they cannot be yours, and you will have to leave them behind. So sometimes even devotees who are chanting and remembering, they're also distracted by these mundane things. They find these mundane things very significant in their lives. But they will have to give this up. And this is called Maya. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, then he continued, because we teach like this detachment, to make the weaker devotees stronger. And you should not remain a weak devotee. There's so little to gain from being a weak devotee. What happens if you're a weak devotee is you always flicker and you go backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And it's so much hard work just maintaining a position because it flips all the time. And so when you become a stronger devotee, you don't have all that energy loss for that. Because now I'm committed. I've decided this life is meant for me to become a serious person, not to waste time. And then it becomes much easier to stand up. You know, like you see the children, and they can't stand up, they're crawling, they fall, they stand, they fall, they stand, and it's difficult. But once they learn to walk, then they never look back. So we should become not weak devotees, but strong devotees. So then the next platform. Now this is where it gets a little difficult. Of course, for us as devotees, we have started on the journey across the bridge. But when you're talking to somebody who is only living on the level of this material knowledge, they struggle when you say, you know, there is something beyond this world. There's something beyond your power to see or know or understand. So the word that is given as a name for Krishna is Adhoksaja. And what does Adhoksaja mean? It means something that's beyond your akshas. That means with your power, you cannot get anywhere near it. You cannot understand it with the faculties that you've been given with a fleshy body and a very subtle but not so subtle mind. You have to be given this from above. You have to be given this. And you have to be receptive in order to receive it. Or otherwise, if we have a cup and it's this much full to here of water, and I want to give you a cup of milk, as I start to pour the milk in, milk and water together will overflow the cup. And you'll get neither the water, neither you'll get the milk. So Adhoksaja means Vaikunta, or that place where there is no time. There is only eternal present. There is no birth and death, no suffering, no sorrow. Nothing is bad there. In that abode there is so much opulence, and everybody there prays to Lord Narayan. They're all reverentially praying. They're already liberated from the coverings of the material world which imprison us. We're like as if stuck inside an egg. Stuck inside an egg. And we're so tiny we don't even know where the edges of the egg are. We're just floundering around and thinking ourselves so important because I've got this together and I've got that together and I'm working on this and in the future I'll get this. And as Srila Prabhupada one time said, this is the age of bluff and quarrel. So this is you read on the internet everywhere, everybody is being encouraged. Come to university, learn how to bluff. We can teach you how to advertise, present yourself, so people will think you're really worth something. I'm not teaching you your character improvement. I'm teaching you how to present yourself. So this is Kali Yuga. It's quite a vicious age, actually. So how can we know what is beyond everything that we can understand? Only by one way. By meeting somebody who has come from that place. And when Srila Prabhupada was one time asked to describe to somebody about his spiritual master, please tell us some of his qualities. Srila Prabhupada said, what can I say? He's a Vaikuntha man. So he's coming with this consciousness. He's not going round in the cycle of birth and death as we are. But as we saw yesterday with the different filters, the different colors over our eyes, we can only perceive his excellences to the degree that we're willing to have our filters removed. And as long as we don't want them removed, we will see in that way. So then the highest level of knowledge that the British knew nothing about, the hippies knew nothing about, the university knows nothing about, the highest level is called a prakrit. This lower level, this material world where we live, is called prakriti, prakrit, material. It's composed of 8 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and a false sense of self. That's all that's going on here, except that it's impregnated with an unlimited amount of little jivas who are busy trying to manipulate their situation to get them somewhere that they can never go. But the aprakrit world means the spiritual world. There is something higher than Vaikuntha. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur has taught that this most superior truth, the highest source of knowledge, is called a prakrit. A prakrit is that realm where Vraja Leela is performed. Krishna is sometimes like a baby there. And there he is controlled by his mother and father, or he is controlled by the other gopis, or he's controlled by his friends. No one can ever imagine such sweet pastimes. No one can make this up. They're too extraordinary. Why should we try to know this aprakrit? Why should we try for this? We should try to serve this aprakrit Krishna with his mother and father and gopis and sakas and cows and very sweet cow-herding pastimes. Because this is the aim and object of our life. This service to Krishna. This is known as aprakrit gyan, knowledge of transcendence in its fullest extent. Now think back again to our British era. The British were so materially competent, so proud, so astute, so good at manipulating resources and getting their ways and means done. How could they understand this? How could they understand that there's a world up there somewhere and we're meant to be there and we're here instead? And that actually being here is not glorious. Being here is like a punishment. And the enjoyment that we think we're having here is so trivial compared to what is available there. And we would only be considered intelligent men and women if we were deciding that we should go there. And if we weren't deciding to go there, then we would be somewhat reformed fools and rascals. Srila Prabhupada would immediately point this out, and it was confronting because Srila Prabhupada would speak about devotees. Devotees never do this. Devotees don't do that. Devotees always do this. And you'd be sitting there as a young, slightly reformed person thinking, he's not talking about me. What am I? I'm not that. And I'm not a karmi because he's talking all the time. Look at these people, they do this, they do that. Pointing out the faults of modern society in a very firm way. And then glorifying devotees. And we would be half proud of ourselves because we were certainly on that side of the fence, but the standard that he was demanding of us as devotees was far away from where we were. And so I remember very clearly when Srila Prabhupada would come to Melbourne. We were living outside. We were living in St. Kilda at the time. I think it was 1975 and 1974, 75 and 76. We were living in Australia, in Melbourne, when Srila Prabhupada came. And we were not living near enough to the temple to make him satisfied. He wasn't really pleased with us. But because we were at least sort of in the boundary area, he would offer a lot of appreciation on a certain level, but you could feel it underneath. There was something subtle, unspoken, sometimes hinted at, that we would be a lot better off if we were living a little more in the community of the temple, serving and facilitating the temple's needs and responsibilities more. And so I remember when Srila Prabhupada was coming, I had had these experiences now over a few years of Srila Prabhupada's mild displeasure. And so it would be with mixed feelings when he was coming, because I knew it was another scrutiny he was going to do. He was going to scan you and sort of like, and he didn't say anything. It was so subtle. But when he sat on the Vyasasana and spoke the absolute truth, uncompromising, clear, straight truth, you'd feel yourself sort of shrinking and shrinking. By the end of the class, I say to my husband, I don't think I'll come tomorrow night. It was really nice. I've got a baby after all. I've got to take care of my baby. I think I've got to go home now. Because he was uncompromising. He didn't shift because he lived up here. So he didn't come down into the murky world of my mind and my ideas and my sensory knowledge. He remained up here. Just like somebody who would live above the clouds, right? And we would come up in an airplane above the clouds and we'd see, oh, look, the sun is here. How amazing. And then we'd go dipping right back under the clouds into the Melbourne airport. With sun? Oh, yeah, sometimes there's sun. But if somebody lived up there, it's sunny all the time. And if you start telling them it's so dull and dark where I live, they'd say, come up here. You can come up here. And you'd say, no, that's impossible. I don't have wings. How can I go up there? It costs money to get on a plane. No, it's all right. I'll live in the dark. Thank you. And they would look at you like, fool. Why fool? Because you belong up here. You belong up here. You come from up here. You belong in that state of consciousness. And everything that's bringing you down is a layer or covering of ignorance. But only by meeting via the words, by the physical contact or by the contact of a person who met a person who met a person, but only by touching this influence. Somebody who lives up here, can it actually totally transform, gradually but definitely, your way of viewing reality. So this is what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came to give. He didn't come to give a limited religion, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity. He was not interested in that. He would call these cheating religions. Cheating religions. He came to present the absolute truth. And the absolute truth is not a term that we use all the time, is it? I mean, I don't every day talk about the absolute truth. But the absolute truth means what's true forever. What's true tomorrow, the next day it was always true. What is true? What is true shelter? What is true value? What is my true home? Who am I truly? This is all contained within the absolute truth. And the relative truth is pratyaksha, unreal, faulty, changing all the time, relativized by today's circumstances. Yesterday, we were hearing from a businessman who explained to us that his friend, who was also a very astute businessman, working for a big company, and the company, somehow or other, the company had some difficulty, and this gentleman had so many shares in the company that he had planned his whole future on the basis of the value of the shares he had in the company. And so therefore he invested a large amount of money in another company. And that company collapsed. And this company collapsed. And his shares were worth nothing. Nothing. And his friend was saying, you know, he's working out now how to sell his big house, how to do this, how to do that, how to work something out. And he said, you know, for him, his plan B is better than most people's plan A. But he doesn't think so. He feels like now everything's failed. I'm a failure. Now, how many years did he go into building up? And all of a sudden, with a few things removed, down, at least in his eyes. So what is the value of these things? We must ask these questions if we want to become strong devotees. What is the value? Also, just a day or so ago, I was speaking to a couple, and they were telling me about their daughter. And the lady was crying. And she was saying to me, my daughter was in such a good position, she was doing so nicely. And now she's met a man, he's 55 years old, double her age, same age as me. and she's saying, I want to live with him, I want to go with him. And we're crying and crying and crying. And my son says, and my son is not a devotee, by the way. My son says, isn't this a time for you to practice your spirituality? Haven't you been asked to practice what you've been telling me? And she was saying, yes, but what am I going to do about my daughter? So do we want to be like that at the time of death? Super unprepared? Totally unrehearsed? We've never understood that anything was leading us step by step, systematically, educationally, towards that final exam. We never put the pieces together. We just lived in the present and tried to enjoy it. Do we want to be like that? And when I see people and hear about these stories of people's difficulty, some part of me always says, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have to do all my work at the last minute in a panic. Find out I have an incurable disease and I have 6 months to work out my whole life and become detached from my family members who I'm absorbed in day and night. I don't want to be like that. I don't think I would pass that exam well. So let me read to you a little of some of the words of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Although he is preaching on these different 5 levels, and he's living himself on the top 2, He's living there, residing there, existing there, never coming down from there. Yet he's walking in the world just like you or I are walking in the world. Just like many of us have seen Srila Prabhupada on a video, and we can see with our eyes, oh, there's a man. We don't necessarily see with our eyes the qualities of that man. But we can hear something, and that helps us to see. So here is a letter. These are from letters of Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. This one is about obstacles. Teachers mercifully arranged for examinations in order to take the student to a higher class. For attentive, serious students, examinations are a source of happiness. Only inattentive students, not like our boys. No inattentive students here. You're not an inattentive student, are you? What?
I think I am.
You are? Okay, all right. Okay. Only inattentive students are afraid or dislike examinations. Do you like examinations?
Sometimes.
Okay, sometimes attentive. Those who glorify material existence and material enjoyment, and who speak on this topic to the tastes of their audience, these people do not face danger or inconvenience or obstacles in their progress. The people who are speaking to the likes of their audience don't have any problem. They can make money from their speech. But those who preach about devotional service and the soul's propensity face many difficulties. These inconveniences come and try to cause us discouragement. But those who have taken shelter of devotional service should definitely know that these obstacles have come to test our love for and our determination for the Lord's service. They are actually assisting us in our progressive advancement of on the devotional path. We should remain firmly fixed in devotional service while accepting the ideal example of Prahlad Maharaj and Haridas Thakur. Both of them exhibited a wonderful service attitude and a high degree of tolerance. Simply to achieve something temporary, human beings are baffled in hundreds and hundreds of ways for hundreds of lifetimes. Just look, everyone's working so hard, driving their cars into the city, driving their cars back, working all day and night, trying to get on. They're working so hard for so many lifetimes. But if in spite of seeing thousands and thousands of examples of failure, they're not getting on, such people dare to even give up their lives to attain insignificant enjoyment. They see all around them people who've failed, but they're still ready to just keep going. Get it, you can get it, like a donkey following a carrot. Fortunate devotees dedicate their temporary lives to understand the Supreme Lord, who is the absolute truth for all time. Now here is a letter that Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur wrote to somebody whose son had just died. This is a segment of that letter. It was about twice as long as this and very, very beautiful. But this is one little segment of that. A Vaishnava comes into this world on the pretext of individual need. On the pretext of individual need. And remains in the material space for the allotted time of such a mission, and thereafter proceeds wheresoever. So this may not be us. This may be an elevated Vaishnava who comes into this world in such a free way. Baladev Prabhu sends him according to his fitness. Therefore your son has gone away in order to serve the object of his worship. And he happens to be a soul, a Vaishnava, emanating from Lord Nityananda, the incarnation of the power of being. If you learn to look upon Lord Nityananda as your son, you will no longer experience any want. Nityananda himself, this is I'll read this twice because when I was reading this I had to stop and think. He says, Nityananda himself has been present as the knower of the heart of your son. You have served him all along. Now serve him still. I'll read that again. Therefore your son has gone away in order to serve the object of his worship. And he happens to be a soul, a Vaishnava, emanating from Lord Nityananda, the incarnation of the power of being. If you learn to look upon Nityananda as your son, you will no longer experience any want. Nityananda himself has been present as the knower of the heart of your son. You have served Nityananda. Now serve him still. The mass of matter of which the body of your son was composed in elemental space has now dissolved into 5 elements. But the soul of your son remains in constant service of his Lord and his energy. Your son, as an object of your selfish enjoyment, has been disassociated from the company of his father as a similar object of selfish enjoyment. Your son is an object of enjoyment of God, and therefore his duty as a Vaishnava is to remain the object of God's enjoyment, as God's servant. God knows that you are not enthralled in the bondage of Maya, and he will not therefore overwhelm you in your misery, aiding you with the power of his infinite mercy. In the absence of your son, you also will have more time for serving Godhead. What God does is for our good. What more can I say to console you? With eternal blessings, Sri Siddhanta Saraswati. So many. Please awaken your soul. Please awaken your soul. The type of bhakti Sri Gaurasundar preached is the highest service, glorification of the Lord, such as was inaugurated by Lord Chaitanya, is the remedy to cure our diseased condition and awaken our ability for loving service to the Lord. It is our duty to faithfully accept this remedy. Then we will all become peaceful. Chanting Krishna's holy names is that infallible remedy, and thus we should glorify the Lord at all times. The Lord has invested his holy name with all his energies, and he has included the crest jewel of all our objectives in the chanting. It is the duty of those devotees who have taken shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet to cultivate the conclusion of the Srimad Bhagavatam by following in his footsteps. Forgetting our service to Krishna, we have become masters. We wanted to become masters, and this material world has provided us with the opportunity. This world is perfectly arranged for that purpose. But mastership is not our constitutional position. Rather, it is the tendency of conditioned souls. There is no peace in following one's conditioning. Peace can only be attained by practicing devotional principles, by considering oneself a servant of Krishna. We have become degraded because we have forgotten who we are. We are Krishna's servant. The spiritual master who is dear to Krishna imparts to us this transcendental knowledge. This process is called initiation. Simply by serving the spiritual master, the desire to engage in devotional service is awakened. And if we sincerely approach Krishna's devotees and hear from them submissively, we will certainly benefit both in this life and the next. Our lives will become fully successful when we engage everything in the Lord's service. This is two things that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is begging from us. You are learned. I do not consider you non-devotees. Because you are devotees, I beg you to please give me two things. This is what he is asking of us. Number one, please forget that you are an important person in this world. Forget it. Forget it. It's an illusion. Forget that you are an important person in this world. And second, he asks something very simple. He says, give up everything and become attached to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Dev. Can we do it? Can we do it? Those who are older and wiser know how hard it is. Those who are young sometimes think, yes, I'll do that. But those of us who are older know that you don't just do it once. When I was young, I think in my early teens, there was a rage in Melbourne or in Australia of American evangelists. And I don't know if anyone knows what an American evangelist is. And American evangelists were very charismatic Christian preachers. They were somewhere between a movie star and a religionist. And they usually had very nice teeth. And they dressed very, very perfectly nicely, and they had lots of spotlights on them. And they had a wonderful organ in the background that played very sentimental music that could move the hearts of sentimental people. And they would speak about God and surrender to God and so many things from a perspective that was somewhat relevant, but it was an emotional perspective. And then at the end, you all sit down. And the room becomes dark, big, they'd have a theater or something, it becomes dark. And then the evangelist would say, now I want you to give your life to Jesus. And the organ starts playing all these very, very moving tunes are playing in the background. And he would say, now just stand up. Wherever you are, stand up. Just stand up and give your life to Jesus. And every time my mother used to take me because I was underage, and every time they did it, it would just work like emotionally on me. I would always stand up. My mother would be like, sit down. And I would stand up. The music and the whole thing, it was so theatrical. It was, yes. I'd stand up, and then they'd say, now, make your way down the aisle. Down the aisle. I'm sure it was hypnotherapy. Down the aisle, so you move your way out of your seat and tears pouring down from your eyes. You walk down the aisle and you open, there's a curtain, and just go behind the curtain and give your life to Jesus. And it was so emotional that everything up to the curtain, I remember, would open the curtain. And when you walk through the curtain, there were these little old ladies and they were selling Bible study courses, and they were all sitting there at tables, and they had little Bibles and little things, and they wanted to enlist you and take your name. And I was like, what? You know, I was going to give my life to Jesus, you know. And this little old lady is there. And then I'd come out with my list, right? And I'd say, sure, what do you do when you get envious? What do you do when you get angry? You know, because kids feel about these things, you know. What do you do about this? She'd say, just sign up here, dear, for the Bible study course. All these things will be covered. Just sign your name there. We'll send everything to you, and then you can go. And I would be I can remember to this day how disappointed I was, because they worked it up to such a point. Give your life to Jesus. But there was no process. There was no practice. There was no guru there. There was no real guidance. And there were no other devotees. You just go home, we'll send it to you in the post, and boom, there you were again. Right as you were before you gave your life to Jesus. So Krishna consciousness isn't like that. Krishna consciousness is more like driving a car. You know, some people have accidents when driving cars. Sometimes it's because something comes towards them which is out of their control. But oftentimes it's because, what? Distraction, or what's the key one?
Speeding.
Not speeding too. What's the very, fall asleep. Fall asleep at the wheel. So everybody's saying, don't fall asleep at the wheel. You're driving. Falling asleep doesn't work well with driving. You're supposed to sleep in bed and drive in the car, and the whole time you're supposed to pay attention to the road. So my mind would object as a younger devotee. You mean I have to keep giving my life to Krishna, like over and over and over and over again? You know, can't I just do it, sign it, and, you know, it's done? You know, and then I can just relax again, you know? This is really intense. But then I would say, but can you do that with driving? Can you just relax? Can you do it with breathing? That now I've breathed enough, now I can just relax? There are so many things that have to be maintained. Can you do it with eating? No, you have to eat again the next day, no matter how much you eat today. So Krishna consciousness is organic like that. We have to maintain it. We have to pour water on it. We have to make it work. And when it goes down, you have to bring it up again. And when it goes up too high and you get too enthusiastic, you bring it down again and be practical. But you have to keep working until it becomes something very, very steady. So then he says, if you are even a little attracted to the Lord, you can easily understand that there is no inconvenience in practicing his teachings. So I can relativize that and say, when you are a little attracted to the Lord, then you can understand that there is no inconvenience in practicing his teachings. So if I'm feeling inconvenienced, that means my attraction to the Lord has gone down. And I have to bring that up again, and I won't feel that inconvenience. Oh, my brothers, why are you traveling the path of inauspiciousness? What do you gain from discussing worldly topics? What do you gain, he says, by discussing worldly topics? Always hear Krishna Katha. speaking Krishna Katha. And engage in Krishna's service. At the present time, the soul is sleeping peacefully after entrusting all its responsibilities to the mind. Break the soul's sleep. Wake the soul up, he is saying, because the mind is the greatest enemy and extremely unreliable. The mind will lead you only deep into the ocean of distress. You must keep the mind under control. It does not matter what our situation is. If we forget the Lord, we will face only trouble. Our fortune lies in taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So before finishing, and there's so much more, unfortunately our time is limited, I would like to go back to a conversation, a lecture actually with Srila Prabhupada. This is in 1976 in Mayapur. I was looking up this pratyaksha, paroksha, aparoksha, adhoksaja and aprakrit on folio to see if I could find something he said on the same subject. Because this may have been something that was spoken a long time ago and it's no longer perhaps relevant to us. But I found out that it is very relevant. Srila Prabhupada is also speaking in the same way. So he said, and I just took quick notes, he said, so pratyaksha, these are all these three, pratyaksha, paroksha and aparoksha, are prakriti or material knowledge. First, knowledge, direct perception, knowledge from authorities, and then self-realization. So understanding what you have been taught, this comes under aparoksha. I now understand. I'm now working with that. He says, up to that level, up to that point, you must practice Vaidhi Bhakti. You must practice regulated principles strictly. And up here, very high, the high level, this is meant for Paramahansas. This is called Rag Bhakti, up here. Rag Bhakti means when I spontaneously am attracted to Krishna in a particular relationship, and that relationship with Krishna is more real to me than the identity that people call me here in this world. Very high level. So he says, but without Vidhi or Vaidhi Bhakti, following regulative principles strictly, you cannot come to this higher level of rag, even though that is our aim. Rag means to follow the devotees of Vrindavan, not to become directly an associate of Krishna, but to follow them. And we can come to that stage that is also called Parabhakti. Srila Prabhupada says, this Krishna consciousness movement, this movement is gradually developing up to the stage of Rag Bhakti or Parabhakti. And when we reach that level, that's beyond this world, then he says, then your life is successful. This is Srila Prabhupada speaking. We should know this. What is the purpose of our Krishna consciousness movement? It is not to have a happy social life. It is not to have a lot of good friends. It is not to take care of your children nicely or to have an economic base to your situation. It's to come to the point of release, getting out of the material consciousness completely and returning to the eternal service of Krishna. In this way, then life is successful. In this way, we should not be disturbed by all the things here, all the problems in this world. Suppose we are lying on the floor. It is very hard. But if we are given a cushion, it becomes softer. In a similar way, the more we become advanced in spiritual consciousness, the more we shall not become disturbed. Now this is so important to understand, because the person who's trying to advance in Krishna consciousness, tolerating the disturbances that come because of others, because of themselves, because of the weather, because of all these things, tolerating and proceeding onwards, they begin to realize that I used to be much more disturbed by these things before. They don't seem to disturb me as much anymore. And before I was a devotee, I was completely disturbed. And now that's not such a big thing. I'm able to tolerate a lot more. So this is a good reason to tell ourselves when we feel like, oh, let me just stay in the shallow water of bhakti. I can sit there in the water. I don't need to swim. I can just splash water on my head and I'll be happy even though it's very hot weather. The shallow water is nice. And we're telling, no, go into the deeper water. No, 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 I'd have to learn to swim. No, go into the deeper water. No, 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 I like shallow water. No, the deeper water is better. We must know this. The deeper water is better. So Srila Prabhupada says, we should think, I do not belong to this arrangement, but I have become accustomed to it. Here we are. I do not belong to this arrangement, but I have become accustomed to it. So by practice, if I have become accustomed to this, by practice, I have to come to the spiritual status. And during practice, one requires tolerance. So these are just a few things to share with you. I always feel really grateful to come here and speak to the devotees in Melbourne, because the devotees themselves are interested in growth, interested in growing and moving forward. And for myself also to come, I have to, they say that the teacher does 100%, gets 100% of the learning and the student gets maybe 10%, because you have to read so many things and organize so many things to find out what to say. So such opportunities to delve deeply into the lives of these exalted personalities are very, very fortunate. And so if any of you wish to take the time and read about these personalities, you'll just find only something wonderful. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur is so much the beacon of our movement. He's like this, and everyone comes after him. Although we as family members, we're in the family of Srila Prabhupada, so we see him. But as we grow up and mature as devotees, we begin to see, oh, behind him is him. And oh, behind him is him. And they're all our relatives. So if you want to make spiritual advancement quickly, you must learn to associate with these previous acharyas, because they are our great, great, great well-wishers. And I think it must be a little bit astonishing to them to see a temple in Melbourne, Australia, or London, England, or in America, to see hippies who had fleas in their hair now chanting or taking sannyas even. This must be something quite wonderful to them. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur particularly, he will say on countless times, he says, I never, ever, ever took a disciple. My Guru Maharaj, Gokishore Das Babaji, told me, don't go to Kali's world, don't go to Calcutta, and don't take any disciples. And I followed both of those instructions perfectly. And when his disciples would offer obeisances to him, he would offer obeisances back and say, I am your servant. So his mood was such that he never had the sense that this all belongs to me. This Gaudiya Math belongs to me. This is mine, I did this, I did that, I did that. Look at all the things. He was simply in this mood, I am a servant. I am a servant. My paycheck comes from the Lord, not from this world. So please, all of us, grow more and more strong in these tenets, and listen and read and hear and associate with these personalities who are rock solid beyond everything, all the challenges we face. And lastly, I wanted to finish by saying how, as I told you, when Srila Prabhupada would come to visit Melbourne, and I had to crawl out of my hole and go and visit him, and I'd feel so bad. And I felt so bad, I felt bad. That was even worse, to feel bad when he's coming and, oh no, he's going to scrutinize me and see that I'm a little lazy and that I don't chant nicely, or sometimes this thing and that thing. Oh, I don't think I want. No, go. So I'd go. And the first experience, the same thing I experienced in preparing this class, was my first entry towards this subject matter. I immediately retreated very quickly and said, I can't do this. I'm not up to this standard, how can I do this? And with Prabhupada, I think, I can't see him. I'd hide at the back a little bit. And then he would just look at you. And he would smile. And when he smiled at you, you felt, oh, just a little bit of confidence would come that maybe, and then of course the next thing you go right up in the barometer and go rushing to the front. And then he would not smile at you because you really weren't that good. But he would give you this assurance. And during the time that he was there, I would find myself re-examining my life, re-examining my values, re-examining my priorities. And he would only be there sometimes for 3 days. But those 3 days would be so intense that it felt like it was 3 weeks. Because during that time, just his presence, just the way he looked, the way he touched things, the way he moved his hands, everything was from this aprakrit level. It was not like you see people today, not like you see people ever. And so then you look and see, I'm nowhere compared to this personality. But by the end of his stay, I found I had gone through a whole process of purification. First retreating, then feeling terrible, then feeling like I can't do anything about it. And then there was always a moment of surrender where I had the opportunity to say, be quiet, be quiet. Later, there was always a moment of opportunity where I had to say, even though I'm so bad, even though I'm so fallen, even though I can't do what he says, even though I know when I leave I'll go back to my bad habits, even though I know I'm going to forget about this, I'm going to desire, I want to take a step forward. I want to take a step forward. And at that particular moment, a peacefulness would come. It was really amazing. I saw it so many times. A peacefulness would come. It was as if Krishna said, I accept. Thank you. You have the right mentality now. And then when he would leave, I would be a little bit better. I didn't go like that, but something would be somewhat better. And later I read in the Krishna book, where Srila Prabhupada explains somewhere that when one is in the association of a pure soul, imperceptibly, without being able to understand how or why, one makes some spiritual advancement. So whenever we can put ourselves in the association of these teachings through these masters, coming down to us from devotees who wish to share them, or we ourselves share them with others, imperceptibly, you're making advancement. So be assured of that and continue with determination to try your best to move forward as per what Srila Prabhupada and all the devotees together, as to what we all desire and to what we're actually capable of achieving. Thank you. Hare Krishna.